Okay, hello and welcome to March's. Yeah, it is March's Grips and Tips session. It's been a while since I've led a session. I love doing this, so I'm glad to be able to do this. And today we're talking about Google Looker Studio, which is another one of Google's awesome platforms. And essentially, we're talking about this because it is a great way of making your organization's data accessible, interpretable, and shareable. So I know that's something that's in pretty high demand nowadays to find a way to share data that is accessible and isn't as complicated as exporting PDFs and going into platforms and configuring that kind of stuff. So we want to present the solution that Google has offered us so gracefully. So let's talk about what Google Looker Studio is and what it can do. So essentially, what is Looker Studio? It is, like I said, an entirely free tool offered by Google that lets you create pretty customizable dashboards using various sources. You can use your Google-based sources like Google Analytics, Google Ads, Google Search Console, or you can use other third-party platforms as well. It uses an API system. So if you're using a third-party platform that's more niche or specific, there's a good chance that Google Looker Studio has connectivity to that. So if you're a financial institution or something like that, and you're using like a bank-specific analytics platform, you can probably connect it to Looker Studio as well. It just needs a little more research to find out what the connectivity is. It basically lets you communicate metrics and data in a way that's more accessible to an audience with varying levels of experience with reporting tools. So if you have an organization with a wide diversity span of Google literacy or reporting literacy, it's a great way to kind of consolidate that information so everyone can find value from one report. Also, it's a great way of consolidating information from various reporting tools. So if you're running Google Ads and you have a website and you have Google Analytics on it and you have other reporting platforms and you don't want to go through every single platform and get reports and export and get PDFs, it's a great way to consolidate all those sources. So if this rings a bell, it's probably because you've heard of Google Data Studio, which is a platform, which is what this platform used to be called until October of 2022. So if this concept rings a bell, it's because it's now called Google Looker Studio, but it was called Google Data Studio. It's whatever you think of the name change, that's your opinion. I think Data Studio sounded cooler, but Google Looker Studio is what it's called, so I have to get used to it. So I want to talk about a couple of ways that this platform can be utilized, and here are a couple of screenshots of what a dashboard can look like. So a couple of ways you can use this. If you're running Google Ads, you can create a dashboard and consolidate all the information that you would typically look out for. So let's say you're paying a marketing agency to run Google Ads for you, and you don't really know how to use the platform, but you want to know how much money you're spending, or you want to know how many conversions you're getting. What you can do is you can create a platform and just have all that information there for you to just click on and look at and be like, okay, I spent this much money, I got this much conversions. This is what my ROI situation is looking like. So it's a great way to just have that information on there. Also, to another Google platform, if you're using Google Analytics, it's a great way to make sure that you can access your key metrics without having to use the platform every time. I know using Google Analytics can be time consuming, especially if you're not too familiar with the platform. This is a great way to just have your data lined out in one clean dashboard for you to look at. And also, it just lets you share, like I said before, it just lets you share reports without having to access multiple platforms. It can be tedious to go to Google Ads, Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Google whatever, or another third-party platform. It can be a very time consuming to go to these platforms individually and gather information from there. This just lets you put your data in one spot. So if this sounds right now, it sounds very abstract. It sounds, fairly complicated, but I'll just talk about how it works really. So this is just a very simple diagram of how it works. So in this example, let's say you have 3 data sources, but at the bare minimum, you really only need one data source for this to work like this. So let's say you have 3 data sources. You have Google Analytics, you have Google Ads, and you have, I forgot what the icon is, and I made this diagram. I think it's Google databases. So let's say you're using all 3 of these data sources here. How it works is it takes these 3 data sources and it gets connected to Google Looker Studio. And from there, it consolidates all your data sources. So at first you start off with your 3 data sources, it gets consolidated into one, and from there you're able to push out this custom dashboard that you're able to share. There really should be another tail of this flowchart that shows shareability and sharing to users, but I'll get more into shareability later on. But in general, this is how it works. It takes your struggling reporting softwares or your external reporting softwares and really just consolidates them and makes them parlayable and shareable and interpretable. So if you're thinking of using this platform for your organization, I just want to walk you through the process that would entail starting with this. So, the first thing you want to look at is, what platforms your organization currently uses. If you are in a pretty large organization, it may be hard to get tabs on every single platform that you use. So maybe you want to start by talking to your IT department if you have one, or talking to your marketing department, or talking to, the owner or something, and figuring out exactly what platforms you guys rely on and what platforms you use to get data. So most common examples I can think of is Google Analytics and Google Ads, but like I said, there's so many different industry-specific ones out there that I can't name them all. I know there's specific ones for credit unions, there's specific ones for banks, specific ones for restaurants. So, it does not have to be Google-based. As long as there's some sort of API connectivity, it can be done. So I'd say just take note of all the platforms that you have access to, and from there, just look within those platforms real quick and identify some key metrics that you or your organization finds particularly valuable. So if you guys want to look at page views, just make sure you're cognizant of the page views metric on those platforms. So if you're looking for conversions, or if you're running a new marketing campaign and you have a specific button in mind that you want to track, just make sure you're looking at that button in particular. So once you have this in mind, and once you have the central goal in your head, you can go ahead and log into Google Looker Studios. You can just go into Google and just type in Google Looker Studios and it'll come up, or you could use that link that I have over here. And just make sure that you log in with the email address that has access to your data sources. So I'm going to call back to Google Analytics and Google Ads. Just make sure that that email has administrator access to your platforms like Google Ads and Google Analytics, because you need that administrator permission to be able to call that data into Google Looker Studios. So once you are in Google Looker Studios, what you can do is, it looks like this. It's pretty straightforward platform here. What you can do is click on this blank report button. And once you're in this blank report, it kind of opens this just blank sheet. And from there, you should start by connecting your data sources. So there's going to be a button on the top that says Add Data. And from there, you want to connect your third-party platforms to it. And once you have all that hooked up, some platforms may be more complicated than others. I know the Google platforms are pretty simple to connect, but I've had to connect to other third-party platforms, and that takes a little more, that has a little more complexity to it and a little more layers to it. Like you may have 2FA, like two-factor authentication, to get into it and whatnot. But just get that connectivity process down, and once you have that in there, you can really start having fun with it. So once all that's connected, that's when the fun part starts, and that's when you can start dragging and dropping and playing around with your dashboard until you find the version, the best version of your current dashboard. So it's all well and good to have data on your dashboard and whatnot, but there are some best practices. There are some principles of a good dashboard design that I want to talk about here. So this slide just has the principles of an effective dashboard. There isn't a right or wrong answer to this, but this is just something that I would highly recommend just including in your dashboards if you want this to achieve its goal of being shareable, interpretable, and accessible. So this is a fictitious company that was on a Google page called Brooklyn Holdings, but I identified a couple of key things that I would include here in most dashboards. So you have an accurate title or label. We know what this report's about, and we know which company it entails or is talking about. And we also have pretty simple metrics here that are really big. So like inspections, that's just a generic numerical value. We know that during this date range, there have been 41 inspections. So you don't need a chart for this. You don't need a pie chart or or a Gantt chart or a donut chart, whatever it is. You don't need that. You just want to have your concise metrics available there. Certain things like facilities covered, staff and duty, these are things that just can have their own individual boxes there. That's easy to just open this page and look at. And from there, you want to have optimized navigation. So I believe in this report example, this example in particular, they have one page per facility. So you want to have optimized navigation where you can flip through each facility and also flip through your date range. I will say your date range is probably the most important part of your dashboard. So I highly recommend having a date range button on here. And that's just because if you're familiar with Google Analytics, one key part of Google Analytics is looking at how your website performs in a certain time period. So if you ran a certain campaign, or if you optimized or got a new homepage or something within a certain date range, you always want to look at the performance before and after that date range. So I highly recommend just looking at putting a date range widget on the top right of your report. It doesn't have to be top right, but from what I've found, it's just the easiest to have it up there, because on all other Google platforms, the date adjuster button is on the top right. So there is absolutely no harm with keeping it consistent and just keeping it in line with what people are used to. And we also have here, we have interpretable visualizations. I think this is super important as well, because there are a lot of cool visualizations in Google Looker Studios, and some, in my opinion, can teeter on the edge of being unnecessary. You have really flashy ones, but I think you want to stick to something that is, like I said, interpretable. So in this situation, this is just a pie chart, and this is the best case scenario pie chart where everything is parsed out, rationally and nicely, but there are situations where it can look a little bit inconsistent. So I highly recommend just having something super simple, like maybe a donut chart or a bar chart or a pie chart. Just have simple graphs like that. And also with your tables, I know tables are a super big part of Looker Studios. So just when you have your tables, just make sure that they are clearly formatted. So over here, you have first name, last name, and phone number. These are called dimensions. And here you have inspections and facilities, and these are called metrics. So these numerical values are adjacent to these dimensions here. So just make sure that you have it kept to a healthy amount of dimensions and a healthy amount of metrics, so that you don't have a crowded table. I think this example did a pretty decent job, because first name, last name, and phone number, that is pretty straightforward. But it has some reports that I tried to pack in a bunch of dimensions and a bunch of metrics as well. So just make sure that you are keeping that to a minimal, or just keeping that to a reasonable amount. In this example here, I like this, where they have kind of a progress bar feature, or I think this is called a Gantt chart feature, where the higher the numerical value is, the more advanced the progress bar is, or something like that. So that's another way of using visual cues and kind of weaving that into your report and making it more interpretable. So this is a pretty good example of a report. So obviously, when you create your report for the first time, it probably won't look like this, because you won't be super familiar with the platform, and that's okay. Like I said, it's an ongoing process where you want to put your dashboard together and just make it look as decent as possible. And I'm sure as you share it out to your organization, you're going to get some constructive feedback and criticism, and from there you can refine and just improve the process. All right, so one thing I want to talk about is shareability. So, with reports on Google Analytics or reports on other Google softwares, unfortunately, those aren't very shareable. I know with Google Analytics 4 in particular, custom reports on there just are not very shareable. All you can do is you can export PDFs and email them, which isn't a super great option. But the good news is that with Google Looker Studios, this platform was built for shareability. So these reports are incredibly shareable. And there are a couple of ways that you can share these reports. What you can do is you can also share an evergreen link that users can click on and access at any given time. This is probably my favorite way of sharing it, just because it is the simplest way. What I do with, if I'm working with a client who wants a dashboard, is I send them a link, and they just bookmark it on their browser or something, and they can access it at any time. Or I also add them as a viewer or an editor to their dashboard. So either one works. So you have that evergreen evergreen link feature. You also have the option to export it as a PDF and share it. This is my least favorite way of doing it, just because you're not able to edit it. Because once it's a PDF, it's just it's a portable document format. It's not going to be able to be manipulated or changed. So there's not a whole lot of versatility with that. There's a time and place for sharing PDFs, but I think with Google Looker Studios, there are better options. You can also schedule your email delivery, which is something that's really cool. This used to be on Google Universal Analytics, but not on Google Analytics 4. And this basically lets you schedule like an email on the 10th of every month, and that gets sent to your email address, and you're able to look at your data from the last 30 days, the last 60 days, or the last 90 days, whatever your set preference is. And if you don't want to share reports explicitly like that, you can also add other users in your organizations, like viewers or editors, to the report. So let's say you work in marketing in your organization and you're creating a dashboard or a Looker Studio dashboard. What you can do is you can add your supervisor as an editor, or add other people in your organization as viewers. So that is something that you can do as well, just to make sure that everyone is privy and everyone has access to that dashboard. So we are very quickly going to jump into a demo here, because I just want to show you guys what navigating a report looks like and just how the interface looks like. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to share my screen on another window here, so bear with me. All right, so this is the wrong one. I wanted to share from what it looks like from a viewer's perspective, not necessarily a editor's perspective. So let me go to a window. Let me just share my entire screen here. Okay. So this is what it could look like when a report is being shared to you. So this is just a basic report that I created here for global reach. So this is just one way that you can segment reports. In the example I went through just now, it had reports by like facility location, but here at Global Reach, we don't have facilities. We're a digital marketing and web design company. So in this situation, we're looking at certain areas of traffic or avenues of traffic. So in this page here, we have referral traffic, and where our which referral sources our traffic is coming from. So what I can do is I can look at this report, and if I want to look at a specific date range, what I can do is let's say I want to look at data from the last month, so February 1st to March 1st. So it may take a little while to process here, but once it is loaded, I'll be able to look at data from the last 30 days. So over here, I'm able to sort by here it's sorting by views by default, but let's say I want to look at which the most engaging referral source is. So I'm just going to click on this, and that's going to give me a pretty sorted chart here. So I just look at what you find particularly valuable. So in this situation here, if you recall, I was talking about the ratio between dimensions and metrics. So here, as you can see, I'm only keeping it to 2 dimensions, and I'm keeping it to 5 metrics here, which is a lot of metrics, but they're pretty relevant metrics, and these are a little bit simpler than what you find on Google Analytics, and a little more relevant to us at Global Reach than what you would find on Google Analytics. But this is just one example of a report you can use with Google Looker Studio. Here is another one that's more visually appealing. So we don't use this one as much. I just wanted to create this one just to show you guys what it could look like. So these are donut charts. Fun fact, a donut chart just has a hole in the middle, a pie chart does not. So this is a more visually appealing graph. And this just gives us information about what age breakdown our users are from, or what city our website visitors are coming from. If we want to sort it by number of users, we can take a look at that. Also, we have users coming in from different devices. I can see here very clearly and very quickly that it comes in mostly from desktop. I have the gender distribution here. So in this situation, we use this, to just gauge how performances are doing and how our web presence is performing. So I just recommend creating one that suits your platform the most, or your organization the most. And like I said, that is up to you, and that is up to your organization to kind of refine that and just make that as well suited to your organization as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate back to the slideshow here. All right, so we're done with the demo. And yeah, so otherwise, this is what we do here at Global Reach. What we do is making, I personally really like just helping organizations have better access to their data and better shareability with their data. So this is something we do here. We can help set up custom dashboards, just help you get your Looker Studio journey up and running. So that's something we do here. So if Google Looker Studio is something that is, is exciting or intriguing to you, we can help you get started on the front foot with setting up a dashboard and getting your data sources connected and taking the complicated setup away from you and just giving you a dashboard that's ready to go and ready to interpret. So yeah. So I'm happy to field any questions that the audience may have about this. This is a pretty brief overview, so I'm happy to answer any questions here. All right, and if we have no questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And like always, thank you for watching.